It was made by this little tiny company called Microsoft. So you can imagine, there we were in America going up to Walmart and saying, hey, look at this train simulator. And they said, well, Microsoft's got one. Who are you guys from Queensland, Brisbane, Queensland? But we overcame that and gradually built on it. And then the Microsoft second version didn't come out. And then, thank God for the global financial crisis, when Microsoft were doing their cutting, back about a year ago, they canned the Aces studio, which did their flight sims and was going to do their train sim. So for me, I've been a little bit lucky in that this is translated into 40 different languages around the world, and it's just a little niche product that just keeps tumbling along, and it's damn good, because after 10 years we've got a lot of it right, and I can just see that going on because there are always trade-offs out there.
I'll let you know because I'll be getting the other great white hope, and one that I have reservations about, iPhone. Are there any iPhone developers? We're seeing a lot of iPhone development in Australia, and I think two of the probably the best studios in the world are based in Australia, in Fireman's and iPhone Studios. But it is being seen as again, a license to print money. So Derek, what I'd like to know from you is what do you reckon the challenges are for iPhone developers from here on out? And where do you think the format will be in 6-12 months? Because it is growing at an exponential rate.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the challenge is getting your product noticed. If you're not in the top 10, you're kind of really, you're lost in a mass of an enormous amount of product. In the next 6 to 12 months, it's going to be like that, but worse. I think, for me, I go to a developer and I look at their quality and I look at the games that they've already produced, and if you've brought 2 or 3 iPhone games to market, then that's better than nothing. It certainly will give me an idea of how you've tackled the handheld space and how you've looked at the challenges of the platform. So, I would like to see iPhone developers use it to leverage into other businesses, but as a business on its own, I don't. Particularly in the game space, I think it's very challenging.
Do the publishers watch the App Store?
I do.
Do you look for IP that may present itself?
Nothing from an IP perspective.
Or just crush the dreams of those people?
Yeah, I don't actually have iTunes either.
It will not be a Call of Duty fight. I want to turn my attention to the Australian game development industry, which has obviously seen a fair bit of upheaval very recently in the last 12 months. One of the issues that we've had, especially in this console cycle, is we haven't exactly delivered to a very standard in any sort of volume either. I mean, I think just for Melbourne alone, we've shipped 2 PlayStation 3 titles since the format launched in the 6th Xbox 360 title, which really doesn't put us in the best of positions. So, actually, I'd like to direct this to Bob and Derek. What is the global opinion and perspective of the Australian games industry? I mean, if there is one, and what do you see strengths and weaknesses of our industry?
Okay, well, I think generally it's positive, I would say. I know I have a positive view of the Australian game industry. I have a long history of working with companies like Tantalus and Chrome and Taurus. In terms of positives, and weaknesses or negatives, I would say that I view the Australian games industry, the biggest positive is the ability to execute. Companies are able to execute on time and on budget, and that's a really big deal. And a lot of companies have tons of experience with licensed products. So if I have a licensed product, the Australian game developers are on the top of my list as people we're going to go to because they go hand in hand on a time and on budget licensed product. I would say you kind of touched on what would be perceived as a weakness is the next-gen development, the lack of consistency, high quality, lots of games. It just doesn't happen here for whatever reason. So if we have a big 360 PS3 project that is an owned IP or an original IP, it would be very difficult probably to look at an Australian studio and give that project to them.
Yeah, I'd echo those comments. I'd certainly, you know, my job is finding developers for external development. You know, so THQ will often come to me with a game that they might be making in one of their other studios, and they'll want me to find developers for that game on the handheld platforms. So I'll go out and I'll find a developer for Avatar and the DS and the PSP. And Australian developers are very good at that sort of thing. They do have a lot of innovation. They do have an incredibly good work ethic, and all the other things that Bob was saying. You know, I think they're the opinion in my company of the quality and execution of games that we've placed in Australia has been really good. But you know, we kind of need that big blockbuster, and you know, we did get there with Destroy All Humans 1 and 2, and that was a big game that came out of a Brisbane studio. But you know, I think people can't put a lot of caveats on that game. THQ was helping them, and THQ is an American organisation, and Pandemic had their US studio, and the US studio clearly helped the Australian studio get that game out the door and get it to the quality that it was. And you know, those things are true, so to some extent.
Well, Grant, I want to touch on here because you've developed a successful business by building one brand, and for, like you said, you know, a substantial amount of time. Is this a viable option for our local community, and how tough has it been?
Well, I suppose you could say it's a safe option. We certainly had a go at a few others, and we had a huge cropper with our online game, and we scuttled back into our shell and went back to trains. But I feel that what we should be doing is the technology, the engine that we've developed for our simulation can be applied to lots of similar other sims, for example, and lots of other games. So I'd like to see us not relying just on one game, but using the technology to develop others, but not going off and starting from scratch again, taking advantage of the money we've spent, the lessons we've learned, and using that technology to build games probably quite cheaply. And we know they should run pretty well, providing they're attuned to the technology that we're talking about.
Has it been easy for you to develop that brand?
Trains has been pretty steady because, as I say, the main competitor got out of it, which was good. And it's quite amazing. Do you know the highest number of players I have of our Trains game and where they come from? Do you want to have a guess? Anyone in the audience? Czechoslovakia. The Czechoslovakians love trains. And the Japanese do love trains, but we've only ever had it translated once in Japan, so that's still a market to go for. So it's been tough, really, to appease the critics because they're such fanatics. Our forums run 24/7. Every minute of the day, there'll be 300 or 400 people on there talking about trains. They're absolutely amazing. And if we do anything wrong, they say, hey, that rivet's in the wrong place. We get all these abusive emails and so on. But we have a community manager. We have a lot of activity on the forum. We make sure we answer everybody's comments and so on. It's been steady. I can't say it's been difficult.
Find your niche, exploit it. You actually touched on something that I'd like to ping Bob and Derek on, and I think it's something we should probably try and knock on the head. A lot of Australian studios tend to come up with an idea, and the first thing they do is dash into creating their own technology. I don't know if you saw Justin Hurley's post-mortem this morning, but that proved critical in the creation of Heroes of Europe and then ultimately the demise of transmission games.
should this be